Thank you everyone for coming out this evening. You are at the Plan Your Park virtual meeting number 2. This is being recorded, so if you do not wish to be recorded, please make sure to keep your video camera off, and we'll go over some Zoom tips on how you can do that. If you need this presentation in Spanish, it is available by emailing info@mprpd.org. Quick Zoom tips before we get started in this evening's meeting. If you are struggling with the view, there is in the top right hand corner on your desktop, the view button. You can click that and adjust it however you like, and it might change throughout the presentation, so you can go ahead and change that. If you're joining us through your phone, the ability to change is just by swiping left or right. If you have issues with muting or unmuting or your camera on or off, you can find those either on your phone or on your desktop in the bottom left hand corner. If it has a red slash through it, that means you are muted and your camera is on. If you have any questions throughout this presentation, please write them in the chat. You can access the chat on your mobile device by clicking more and then the chat button. And if you're on a desktop, you can go to your bottom ribbon where the mute area is and click on the chat box. If you have a question, you can also raise your hand. Again, that's still located under the participants section where the mute bar is. Click on that, and then you can click on raise hand, which will raise a digital hand, and we will answer your question at the end of the meeting during the question and answer section. If you are joining us through a mobile device, there's a couple of extra features by clicking more at the bottom right hand part of your screen. You can access the chat, you can access reactions as well as raising your hand. And tonight we will be having polls. So polls are accessible. If you're on a desktop, it'll pop up automatically. If you're on your phone, you can click more and then navigate to the polls button. So just to test it out and just to make sure the polls are working for everybody, we're going to go ahead and put up a practice one right now. All right, and you should see a quick poll that pops up asking if you have been to Palo Corona Regional Park. If you would just select yes or no, just to check to make sure you have access to that. If you are unable to find that feature, you can message directly in the chat to me, and we can message directly to get that issue solved, because again, polls will be a part of this presentation. All right, thank you for your feedback. I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. And just a quick sharing of the results. Most of you here have been to Palo Corona Regional Park. All right. And without further ado, we have Jackie Nelson.
Thank you, Savannah, and great job. I really appreciate the poll and seeing that most of you have been to Palo Corona Regional Park. If you see me looking up in the corner or in a different direction, it's because I have 2 monitors and I'm checking to make sure that everybody is included in this meeting that wants to be here. So before I start, I want to go a little bit off script, and I want to do a poll of my own using the raised hand feature or the chat feature. So this morning I was on the radio talking to Jim Boson on KMBY radio. You can find it streaming online, or you can catch it the old-fashioned way on 95.9 FM and AM 1240. So please put in the chat or raise your hand if you heard or listened to that radio program. Savannah, if you don't mind, keep capturing that information for me, that would be great. So tonight, I'm going to be talking a little bit about the Park District in general, the goals, the history of the Palo Corona Regional Park acquisition and how it's been used, some of the findings that we've had through your voice and your feedback, and also, well, I'll be talking a little bit later about how this evening is going to run. So just to begin, increasing social equity and engaging our the people in this area with nature and history, and enhancing the parks district's relevance to our community district-wide are key goals for the board of directors and the staff. We are committed to a balanced distribution of high-quality parks, open spaces, facilities, recreational and environmental education opportunities throughout the district, especially focusing on inviting and serving the region's diverse population. Entrusted to preserve and protect, we are dedicated to better serving you. We value your input to achieve this. Tonight, we will be discussing the Rancho Canada Unit of Palo Corona Regional Park and the preferred amenities and features for the Rancho Canada Unit, also referred to as the MPRPD headquarters and the gateway. It is all of these. A little history of the park district, or a little history of Palo Corona Regional Park. It was acquired in 2004 and now has more than 4,700 acres, primarily consisting of natural habitats. The northern boundary of the park is the Rancho Canada Unit, which is about 1 mile east of Highway 1, and the park extends all the way down to Garapata State Park. As the bird flies, you would be flying over 13 acres of 13 headwaters, and for a wildlife corridor, you could travel from Palo Corona Regional Park 70 miles down south all the way to Hearst Castle and San Simeon, with views of open space and corridors for wildlife to run. The history of the park includes land use that's been used by the Esalen, Ohlone, and Rumsian people. It's been used for agricultural site grazed by ranchers and dairy farm. It was also one of the first sites in the US to cultivate artichokes. In the late 1960s and early 70s, it was a premier public golf course. All of these land uses allowed the site to remain open as an open space. Working over the next 20 years, the Park District will be restoring the former golf club and the Carmel River site into more natural habitats, and further creating an area for research, restoration, education, and recreation. Guiding the work that is being done is the General Development Plan. In 2016-2017, the Park District embarked on the General Development Plan for the areas that you could see in the picture that we call the Front Ranch, from the barn to Inspiration Point and Animas Pond and trails, and to the back country, which is currently under research and development for public access. A different project than the one we are talking about tonight. And still, these projects align, and we are discussing the future of Palo Corona Regional Park. In 2017-2018, the Rancho Canada Unit was conveyed to the Park District, slowing the General Development Plan, so we could include you and talk about the features and opportunities to explore. The General Development Plan includes several years of research and many public meetings where we gathered public comments of what the public wanted to see at the site and what types of facilities. Both the west portion, also known as the Gateway Unit, and the east portion, known for the dog park, the Incident Command Center for Emergencies, including CAL FIRE, have been discussed and developed, keeping in mind funding for Palo Corona Regional Park came from grants for habitat protection and mountain lion habitats, limiting some of the development within the park. We also did a CEQA analysis, CEQA standing for California Environmental Quality Act analysis, which is fully compliant and has been accepted. It looked at both areas within the coastal area and projects projects outside the coastal zone. This project that we're talking about tonight is outside the coastal zone. The Plan Your Park meetings build on the outreach process launched with the general development plan and are the next phase of discussions. We embarked on June 30th with a virtual meeting, our first one. Then we had a public open house on July 17th. Now we're having the second virtual meeting, the final public virtual meeting for you to seek your input, though we encourage you to stay involved. These engagements build on what we've learned through the general development planning process and are being used in grant applications as we move forward. Your input is instrumental in the design of the future of your Palo Corona Regional Park. So we've heard what you had to say. Primarily, we all agree that it needs to be natural and stay natural. So a theme to incorporate the natural environment is a priority. The weather's a concern, specifically wind. There's concern for comfort. So in different areas where we have amenities and features, the structures built, we will take into consideration the wind. Also, maintenance. Maintenance is an issue. And so we are aware that we prefer a low maintenance on the improvements and will work towards that. These factors will be incorporated into the planning process. The Plan Your Park meetings also provide additional support for the Park District to seek funding through grants. Right now, we're looking at a regional park program grant through state parks with an application due on November 5th of this year. We're looking to get to apply for $3 million award to help with these features that we'd like to develop. Awards will be scheduled to be announced as early as spring of 2022, though some of these features may take longer. I mean, sometimes the announcements take longer. What we're looking at putting into the grant application includes the dog parks, the children's playground, site improvements, and the ADA parking. You may wonder, well, what about the other features? And what about restrooms? Well, we are going to be phasing the projects in. And the great news is the Park District is funding funding projects. We will be funding the restroom, the entrance plaza, and the bus landing, because these are key features for getting and accessing the trailheads. Tonight, staff and consultants from Regional Government Services, Page and Turnbull, Tenover Studios, and BFS Landscaping Architects will be presenting key findings from the virtual meetings, the in-person open house, and several online surveys, and many hours of public engagement, especially from our dog park for the Mulalis and the Levies. Thank you all. If you have any questions or comments, please place them in the chat feature as we have scheduled time at the end of the presentation to answer them. So stay till the end. Envision the park today as you would like to see it. A park for everyone with essential elements, restrooms, restoration, parking, trails, wildlife. So, and we will work together to make that vision come true. So without further ado, allow me to introduce you to Jean Crooks with RGS Services to provide a summary of your input. Thank you.
There you go. Hi, I'm Jean Crooks, and I am the grant writer for this project. My job is to number crunch and analyze everything you have said to us through surveys and activities, and to help inform the district and the design team in what you want for your park. So I'm interested, yeah, there you go. We want to thank you for your participation, but I'd like to see how many of you have engaged with us in the past. If we could pull up a poll, Savannah. So how have you engaged with the Palo Corona Regional Park, Plan Your Park activities. Check all that apply. I recognize some of you. We've had surveys, meetings, open house event, but it's okay if this is the first time you've joined us. Okay, how'd we do, Savannah? Wow, thank you very much. We appreciate your input. That's fantastic. So as you know, we have asked you what you want in your park. And now we're going to tell you what we have learned so far over all of the outreach activities that we've done. We have been busy, and so have you. As you can see, we have tried to engage you in every way we know how, and you have complied. You want to tell us what you want in your park. So you have engaged on social media, you have attended the open house and the meetings, and you know, Jackie's been on TV and radio, and we appreciate that. And we've always tried to respond to your questions at info@mprpd.org. If you have any question tonight and you don't want to put it in the chat, feel free to put it in an email if that's more your comfort. We will always be posting our updates, our reports about the surveys and the status of this project on the website. So please contact us that way, or check Facebook or Twitter or YouTube. Okay. So I'm the one who has been reading everything you've said to us, and we want to tell you that we have heard you. We've heard you, and there are some themes that have come along. One is that you want to maintain the natural beauty. So that means you want to support the rewilding of the property. You want natural elements in the design. You want to lessen the impact of development, especially regarding the use of water and the use and reuse of resources that are already there, especially around the pond and the dog park. You want us to use existing land contours. You don't want a bunch of bulldozers on your property. And you want to maintain sight lines so that the people who live around the area can still see the property and that you can still enjoy the park as it is. You want us to maintain, or excuse me, minimize the maintenance costs, and that the design should incorporate sustainable materials that require minimal maintenance year-round. You also want to offer something for everyone, and that refers to accessibility of the trails, the features, the restroom, and parking. We heard you loud and clear about that. This really should be a park for everyone. You also want the design to be for all weather access. I'm kind of new to the Carmel area, and it is windy there almost every day. I thought the Berkeley Hills was windy, but I think you have us beat. So I understand and appreciate your desire for shade or shelter. And so the design team is taking that into consideration as well. So we learned a lot from everything you said about the dog park. This is a word cloud that was developed with things that you have said often or things that you have rated highly. If you're a person who likes statistics and percentages and charts and graphs, you can go to the website and you will see the full report of the surveys. For those of you who just want the bottom line, here it is. You want shade, you want an off-leash dog park, especially for your big dogs, but you want a place for your little dogs too. And we understand that because most of us have dogs. You want it to be safe, and you want adjacent parking, and you want shade structures. Not a lot to ask for dog park, but you want it to be a nice dog park. And you want a playground. Of course, a park needs a playground, but you want it to be an accessible playground. We want this to be a state-of-the-art playground for all children of all abilities. And that is really important, so that we need ramps and rails to keep them safe. We want activities so they can socialize with each other and be active and learn to appreciate a natural environment. The design for the playground should be more natural instead of steel. So you want it to blend into the environment. And we also heard a lot about wildlife. You want us to support the habitats, you want to see wildlife, and you want to protect them. You also want to learn about it, and you want educational experiences around the pond. That is a wonderful opportunity to restore the pond area and make it a habitat, and to have programming around it. So those are the main features that we're considering for the grant. Now I'd like to turn it over to Greg Unito, who's going to talk about the features on the west side of the park and the design of those.
Thank you, Jean. Hello, everybody. My name is Greg. I'm a planner and the project manager for the west side of the park. And both Beth and myself are going to kind of tag team you a little bit here with you on what we heard and some of the feedback we got on the features for the west side. I just want to quickly also mention that Stephen Lee is not able to join us tonight, but he's been instrumental as well with a lot of this work. So the west side of the park gateway, if you will, as we've called it many times, and we know what that is, but what does that mean to all of you? That means the gateway, it's the front door, it's the trailhead, it's the place you encounter first when you arrive to the park. If you're not going to the dog park, but you're going to venture off up to Inspiration Point. So what we've got on screen right here, shaded in red, is loosely the boundaries of this park gateway side. And it's been, developed and not developed, but it's been imagined through the GDP effort, to a certain degree. And what we're trying to do is take it to that next step. And we've had a lot of fantastic feedback from you all on what you want. And so what we're going to do for the next few minutes is kind of go through some of these features on this side and make sure that we really got it right. Did we hear you correctly with some of these features? So the first phase of the improvements on this west side, I've circled here with this red dashed line, is basically the plaza, the drop-off, and the restroom building that are all at the very front door, if you will. The front door of the park site is something that's already in progress, and we're going to be able to bring that to fruition, relatively soon. I'm not going to give you any kind of date or deadline on that, but it's the first thing you'll see coming out of the ground. But that's going to set the stage for the rest of the park, in which you have all been very helpful in giving us feedback and giving us your commentary and designs. But I do want to kind of orient you a little bit here and just point out that the first set of numbers 1 through 7 are really the first phase of work that both Jean and Jackie were mentioning earlier. And that includes the restroom building. It includes the plaza, the shade structures, and the bus drop off. There's going to be some new signage that you're going to see, first of all. And then in number 4, if you see that just outside of the circle, I kind of went back and forth. Should I include it? Should I not include it? What we're doing with that is we're taking advantage during this first phase of the grading opportunity. We're going to have, eventually a full park, but why not take advantage of some of this minimal earth moving and make the investment in that number 4, which is a event pad space for small festivals and small events that could happen out with perhaps a tent canopy and other type of weekend activities.
And Greg, if I could add,
Mhm.
one of the opportunities for that tent pad is that we're able to start to look at how we can remove some of the traditional turf around the site and look at what we can, and the granitecrete is a permeable paving product that will allow for water to infiltrate through it. So these are just some of the sustainable measures that the district is taking as they start to reimagine what this traditional golf course could look like once it's been sort of rewild.
Exactly. It's not going to look like a golf course in the traditional sense, I think would be a fair assessment. So nonetheless, so this kind of sets the stage for the overall improvements. And if you go to the next slide, we just wanted to bring this image back to you one more time, just to kind of show you the image through the front door, as I mentioned earlier. And what you see in the distance is the new restroom building. It'll be an 8-cabin restroom building with family restrooms, as well as a drinking fountain, accessible restrooms on two sides. And the materials will be stucco and clay tile style roofing. But it should be sympathetic to the landscape and not distract, which is something we heard a lot about. Next slide, please. And then, as I mentioned, Beth and I are going to tag team this. I'm going to turn it over to her so she can talk about the rest of the park improvements in the future phases.
Thanks, Greg. My name is Beth, and I am a associate principal and project manager at BFS, and we're located in Monterey. And it's nice to see some familiar faces tonight from our previous events. So a few of the things that we were focusing on when we started to kind of do this community outreach were finding some kind of a streamline of what the park character, what some of the programming wants to be. And so when we were looking at things like the playground and other things like the amphitheater and the sort of observation decks at the pond, we really asked for your input on where do these program elements really want to fit into the site. And so when we were out on the site in July with the open house, you folks helped us sort of realign where the amphitheater is going. We've moved it now to kind of nestle it in between some of the existing trees. We've also gotten your input on the outdoor classroom and the observation decks. So those are some of the modifications and refinements that you're seeing on this plan in front of you. But as we jump into the next slide, what I wanted to share with you is really what we heard from you folks during our outreach event. And a couple of the things that I found really interesting was what the pathway material wants to be. We have a lot of opportunities to provide accessible pathways. And in a traditional sense, folks have always thought, oh, that might be concrete or asphalt. But now we have the opportunity to look at different materials like stabilized DG or natural earth binders, which allow us to provide more of a natural setting and a natural material, but still meet the ADA compliance that we're looking for when we're improving the park pathways around the site. One of the other things that I found was really interesting is folks really wanted to keep the picnicking areas small and intimate. We weren't looking to create large group spaces. We wanted to create little pockets of picnicking. And I think that's a great opportunity for families who might be coming to enjoy the playground and some of the more sort of local elements to the Discovery Center, but also folks who are striking out and going hiking for the day. And then the other thing we talked about was just protection from the wind. And really the major focus we had was, can we provide sort of a natural windbreak using native or sort of drought resistant, drought tolerant trees along the western edge of the site to start to mitigate some of the wind. And then secondly, we want to talk a little bit more about some of the more exciting program elements. So on the next slide, when we talk about sort of interpreting the site and interpreting the habitat of the site, we were really excited to look at how we can start to bring some of the native habitat that occurs out in the more of the ranch and open space area into the sort of this core pond area. So whether that looks like introducing things like roosting boxes or nesting boxes, as well as providing some habitat education through interpretive signage. These are all ways that we can start to interpret the habitat as well as create new habitat for animals, wildlife, even biotics to start to grow in what's been a traditional golf course area. And then one of the things I'm really excited about is our opportunity to really look at the landscape and the topography of the landscape and how can we capture stormwater, and we can feed that stormwater through sort of some slight modifications in the landscape into the pond, and then we can start reusing that stormwater for irrigation. And so when we look at sort of what the public and the community input has been through this project, there's really a key focus on sustainability, flexible spaces, as well as sort of expanding the habitat through the through this sort of core area. And then Greg is going to talk a little bit about the classrooms.
Thanks, Beth. So at the open house, we did have a few different stations set up, and I believe most of you that were there gravitated and walked around and ended up at most of the stations at one point during the day. And I got the chance to talk to a lot of you at the picnic shelter station. But first, I want to talk a little bit about what we heard about the outdoor classroom. And what we heard was that flexibility was a really big item. You all want to have the flexibility to use this outdoor classroom for small groups and for larger groups, but not have a fixed classroom seating type of space that seems only for one use. And we heard that from multiple people. And then we also heard that it should be a relatively open structure that lets the views and nature flow through it. Let's be able to see the nature around it. Let's not close it up and treat it as a sealed box. And that is a fantastic way to keep nature flowing in and around the building. And so we'll definitely keep that in mind as we move this forward. Material wise, we over and over heard resounding votes for natural materials, stone, wood, natural materials that speak to the beauty of the site and don't distract from it. So, we're definitely incorporating that kind of thought into how can we create an open, airy space that does not dominate the landscape and respects its surroundings. We heard a few comments about locating the structure, and we'll get to that a little bit with the siting. But as far as outdoor seating versus indoor seating, I think we heard a little bit of preference for both. If you can go to the next slide, please. Picnic shelters. Those of you that were on site for our open house, I would guess that 90% of you here voted for the image on the top left. It was the resounding favorite image that we heard. And I think the answer to that is because of the materials, the rustic nature of the materials and the stone. We heard over and over, loud and clear, how much everybody loves the natural materials. And, we're looking into different ways of incorporating that in a way that does not dominate the landscape. Again, the same idea, keep these structures simple. And when it comes to shade and shelter, wind obviously is a significant factor. So wind breaks will be incorporated into both the picnic shelters and the outdoor classrooms to provide some protection for that. We heard that over and over, and we were there many times battling the wind as well. So it's definitely something that's been ingrained as we move forward with the design of these structures. As far as sizing of the picnic shelters, we heard that, groups of people as small as 2 up to, larger groups of 20 would most likely utilize these structures. But so we're working with BFS to look at small group settings, as well as, is there a way we can accommodate a larger group? But again, we don't want to dominate the landscape. We want to keep it in its natural state as much as we can without imposing, large and big structures on it. Next, please. And the amphitheater. This was we got a lot of surprising response to this, and as Beth mentioned, the siting was a preference for the siting was expressed during the meeting, and we've responded to that already in our preliminary drafts, kind of working more with the tree groupings as well as the topography. But in terms of materials, what we heard on the amphitheater was, again, the stone and the hardscape is something that people really like. Low maintenance is also a preference. If we have a lot of manicured grass, how is that sustainable, and it's a maintenance issue. So we heard you on that, and I think using natural plants for screening is a preference, as well as the tree backdrop for this, not turning this into a large built structure, but instead using the natural setting. Next, please.
So we wanted to talk a little bit more about the playground. During the last community meeting and during the open house, Jean provided this great graphic in the beginning of our presentation about just some of the specifics that we heard, and a lot of that had to do with safety. A lot of it had to do with sort of the style of the playground. And so when we think about what an universal access playground is, obviously, like Jean said, we want to be providing a playground that's meant for children of all ages and children of all capabilities, with who can really just have a variety of experiences. And one of the fun things about playgrounds is we can take some of that fundamental sort of programming and we can really imagine it in any sort of different theme and idea that can come up into our minds. So Savannah and the district, they've reached out to a handful of different children and youth groups to kind of figure out what should our theme for the playground be. And some of the kind of resounding ideas have been a playground that really focuses on capturing nature. And what about nature makes kind of a playground exciting? Well, some of that has to do with utilizing natural materials. Can we create a slide embankment that looks like a rock quarry that's been carved out of the side of a hill? Can we create a huge treehouse structure that has a slide coming out of it? These are all really exciting play elements that traditionally may have only served one type of child, but in today's day and age, we're able to design and program these structures to provide access ramps and certain sorts of climbing opportunities that allow for children who may have modality issues or vision issues to really navigate these spaces. And on the next slide, I just wanted to talk a little bit and show sort of all the different ways we can capture some of the freestanding supplemental playground equipment ideas. Some of that has to do with looking at natural materials such as log stacks. There's a lot of flexibility when we start to look at how we can stack and program logs. It becomes an enclosed space that can be envisioned to be like a little house. It becomes like a tinker toy structure that kids can start to climb up on. And what we really like about all of these is that it brings children together. It really encourages side-by-side play. And so as we continue to think through these ideas, we're really looking to you as a community to help us sort of refine the program of these spaces. But I think we're getting on the right track. And so we had a couple of poll questions we wanted to ask you folks. And now is also a great time that if you have a question, please put it in the chat and we'll make sure we get to it at the end of our presentation. So you should see 3 questions on your screen if you're able to take the poll. And we look forward to seeing your responses. And now I will turn it over to Tanover Studio and to Julia, who is going to talk a little bit more about the dog park.
And if we could just get a couple more seconds to let people finish up the poll. We've only had 5 people respond, and I'd like to share the responses as well. And remember, if you are having issues accessing the poll, feel free to message us directly. That way we can get you squared away so we can see your feedback. And we will be ending the poll in 3, 2, 1. Just so you all can see some of the results. For number 1, looks like playground is the biggest hit. And for the playground, the most exciting activity is the hillside embankment slide. And it looks like of the people that we polled, we've captured and summarized your input well. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks, Greg. Thanks, Beth. Thanks, Jackie, everyone, to in introducing tonight's presentation. My name is Julia Oberhoff. I'm a principal and landscape architect with Tanover Studio, and we are working on the east side of the site, where our primary focus is the development and implementation of the small and large dog parks. Just going back to a little bit of what Jean already presented, you know, throughout this process of the virtual meetings, the in-person open house, and the surveys, the feedback that we've gotten has followed some themes that you know, have to do with minimizing development and or sort of renaturalizing the prior use, which was a golf course, reducing the water use, increasing sightlines, things of that nature. And we're hoping that the implementation of the dog parks reinforces or helps actualize a lot of those goals for the entire unit. And we had the pleasure, this is just showing, you know, when we were at the in-person open house and through the virtual meeting and through the surveys, we had the pleasure of gaining some feedback directly from the public that really allowed us to hone in on a couple of key topics that were of you know, primary interest. The accurate or you know, sizing of the 2 dog parks, in particular the small dog park, the shade structures and what the specific detailing design of those shade structures would be. Seating, what types of seating, surfacing, what types of surfacing would the dogs have, you know, to play on, and what types of surfacing would the paths getting you to and from the parks offer. Fencing, and the ways in which we can allow for safe entry and exit, which is what we're calling the vestibules. And then lastly, the topography and terrain of the sites. So this slide shows you the design for both the small and large dog parks. To the north and is the 2.5 acre large dog park. And then just to the south is the 1/2 acre small dog park. One of the main comments was that it would be desired to have the small dog park enlarged, possibly to, you know, as much as 1 acre or so. And I'll just go ahead and annotate here. But due to the existing conditions of the site, we have the opportunity of potentially expanding, you know, this park to the east. So that's again speaking specifically about the small dog park. At the present moment, we'll continue to proceed with the design of the initial 1/2 acre, but again, with, you know, future funding and future goals and priorities outlined by the community and the district, we have this opportunity to potentially expand to the east. Another key element that was discussed and that we received feedback from you all was the style and design of the shades canopies or pergolas that would be located within each of the dog parks. We have in our initial outreach efforts, we contemplated a couple different styles of shade canopies, shade sails, more traditional trellis, you know, wood trellis structures like you're seeing here. And it was expressed that the wood trellis structures were of interest, but then within that, we've, you know, there's the opportunity of potentially leaving them as open rain through structures that would just provide, you know, dappled light that comes through or sort of partial shading, versus images 3 and 4, which indicate, you know, the potential for a more weather, all-weather shade structure that would work for even inclement rainy days. As for seating, we have the opportunity to provide some seating within the dog parks. And so what we've done here is showed you a variety of options of seating types. Benches that have seat backs, benches that just are simply more minimal in nature without the seat backs. Images 2 and 4 are showing more of either heavy timber or stone seating bench elements, and then images 1 and 3 are showing some options for benches with seat backs. The question here has to do with, you know, we want to provide a feature to the dog park which gives dog owners and or other visiting guests comfort, and at the same time recognizes the need for something that's low maintenance. So which is why we've showed a variety of material selections, whether it be stone or, you know, a powder coated metal or wood. And here we also heard, you know, there was a lot of feedback on the types of surfacing within the dog park. We offered up and asked for feedback on a variety of surfacing options, from mulch to pea gravel to decomposed granite, which is otherwise known as DG, or just simply leaving the park with the existing natural material and terrain that it is now, as the golf courses sort of return to the wild. You know, they will be that area will be a mixture of native grasses and or you know, perennials that pop up throughout the year, and then just simply the native soils that dogs will be running on. We heard that there was a significant support for and interest in just simply letting it be the natural surface, which is non-irrigated And so that will likely be the direction that we continue with in the initial implementation. But there's always that opportunity to add to and improve to the dog parks. 2.5 acres and or a half acre, those are significant areas to provide features within. And so as the park becomes used and we continue to get ongoing user feedback, there's the opportunity to implement additional areas with different surfacing. We also got feedback from you all in the community about the perimeter fencing and the method with which to provide safe entry and exit to the dog parks. We will likely be proceeding with a simple wood post and rail fence design with then a welded wire infill panel, as you're seeing in images 1 and 2. And then image 3 just indicates there were some questions that we received about the size of the vestibules. And we wanted to reiterate that as designed, we're proceeding with a 10-foot by 10-foot area that's actually provides 2 different, side-by-side entry-exit vestibules, which are a bit larger than what the industry, standard is. But again, we think that this will provide a safe entry and exit for both the small and large dog parks. We talked and wanted to get feedback from you all on, agility and the opportunities for active play for the dogs. Could we provide an approach to mounding the parks themselves so that the dogs are getting some terrain to navigate through? And so it was well received that just simply mounding and not necessarily having to provide a formal agility, setup for the dogs would be a great, first start here for both the small and large dog parks. And, in closing, again, we just want to thank you all for the continued feedback that you have given us through the virtual meetings, the in-person open house, and the surveys. The hope and the goal on our part is really to continue to collaborate with you and the district to design and implement dog parks for both small and large dogs that serve the needs and future goals that you have, and give you an outlet for you and your companions. So at the end here, we're going to have another Zoom poll with a couple of additional questions. So please take the time to just give us some additional feedback here through the poll. Savannah, are you gathering results on the poll?
Yep, we have seven people.
Wonderful.
So we'll go ahead and close the poll here. Make sure to raise your hand if you're not quite ready. And 3, 2, 1. And of course, we'll share the results. So for number 1, for the overhead roofing pergola of the folks here, we have a preference for a full sun or rain shelter with a solid roof. And for number 2, we have a preference of benches with seat backs. And for number 3, The ideal size for the small dog park is kind of split, but the majority is at 1/2 an acre as currently designed.
Great, thanks for participating.
And now we have our question and answer section. So if you have any questions, you can type them in the chat. You're also welcome to unmute yourself and speak.
Well, I wanted to point out, this is Julie with RGS, and I want to thank everyone for participating tonight and listening to our presentations. And we'd certainly like to hear from you. You know, did we get it? Did we get it right? You know, is your general impression that we heard the input over the past 3 months directed to these amenities? Is there something that we missed? We certainly would love to have the opportunity to share with you kind of the path forward on these projects.
David has a question.
Yes, hi. Thank you for letting me come up with a question. I was wondering, have you considered in the planning stages water capture systems of all different types? There are not only off of the ground and parking lots and off roofs and down through the gutters and the like, but there's also atmospheric water generators that take it just like a large dehumidifier. And you can get thousands of gallons a day of water. And so when it comes to, you know, watering the trees, the things that are newly planted, you know, keep taking care of that, and even keeping water in the pond and things of that nature and, you know, for fire protection in and around the trees, you can zone sprinkler systems and things of that sort. Has that been considered, those types of options?
Julie, I can answer that if you'd like.
Certainly.
That's a great question. Thank you. And yes, why the roof on the, you know, main headquarters, the roof that is used by the Wedgwood wedding venue has a great location to capture water. Also, the roof over on the old golf cart shop is another thing. We've had many discussions. One of the options would be to capture the water and actually put it back into the pond to maintain a healthy pond environment, as well as watering it. And there's and so definitely an option. I think the big consideration for the park district at this time is to get some of these construction projects underway, because there's going to be so much movement of the landscaping, and then we'll be able to visit that. Another one is a view shed. So wherever we put the water catchment system or the solar energy, these resources that help with renewable resource energy consumption and savings, we'll always keep in mind the view shed concerns. Anybody else want to add to that?
Sorry. Yes, please. Thank you.
Julia?
Jackie, I'll add too. Just as Greg and Beth mentioned, a lot of the materials that we're looking to use, for example, in this image, you'll see just to the west of the dog parks, there's a new what will be an improved gravel parking area. And so we're looking to use materials that are permeable. So while we might not be capturing water to then redirect towards landscape, you know, irrigation and or an active use, what we are doing is promoting permeable materials that allow for, when we do have rain events, that water infiltrates into the landscape and then, you know, helps to recharge our groundwater sources, rather than something that is impervious, like a extensive concrete or asphalt surfaces that then just force runoff, which then, you know, collects pollutants and things like that. So we're trying to really be mindful about, you know, future improvements being ones that allow for proper stormwater management and infiltration.
Yeah, could I make a comment?
Please.
Okay, thank you.
This is a
Thank you very much.
conversation. We're here to listen to all of what, all of you, and really enhance what we provide the public. And
Yeah,
so, water catchment's an important conversation.
Mhm. Yeah, well, yeah, and, if anyone else wants to speak to these things, of course, wave your hand, and I don't need to be the only person, but I've worked with some scientists that have been doing it for many, many years in regards to our water situation, our freshwater situation, not only just in Monterey County, but California in general, Northern California especially, but Southern California too. But we're in a situation now that it's not too late, but some say we're kind of behind the game here, but it's yeah, our aquifers, our wells, city water, all that kind of stuff is being infiltrated by salt water and things of that sort, and they're only about 1/3 of what they normally should be with water. And so I'm working to try to get that information out there, educate all of us, the kids, all the way up to us kids, in regards to water, not only just water capture, but conservation of water, to really educate, because if global warming continues or climate change continues as it seems it's going to, it's only going to get worse. And so I just feel it's a big element that needs to be addressed and educated to all of us. All of us need to do that. I've been doing it myself the last couple of years. So so I have presentation slides and all that stuff from a couple of companies that's what they do. They do the research and create the PowerPoint demonstrations and things of that sort that can educate all of us on what we can do, more than just water capture, but how to capture and store the water, be it like the pond. I was at the pond today, but there's other ways that you could store underground, above ground, things of that sort, with aqua blocks and things of that nature. And you can create educational water features to teach our kids, so that at the same time they're enjoying it and having fun, and you have plaques, you have things, so the kids can really learn about the future for fresh water. And we really, all of us need to learn what we are doing, what we're not doing, and bring change to just that world, and so anyway, I just wanted to speak to that. And then see if there's any questions that I could answer, or just to hear other people's thoughts and ideas in these regards.
Well, thank you, David. That water conservation is a big part of the education programs that that we have developed, and the messaging that we have. We have messaging at Garland, and we know that part of the plan here with this features of the Plan Your Park at the west side and the east side of the dog park, that there will be interpretive signage, and water conservation will definitely be one of those topics of conversation. So thank you very much for your feedback.
Sure. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David.
Yeah.
And I also want to point out that Anne presented in the chat that she liked the seat back benches that were made of natural materials because it's a little more comfortable for older adults. So thank you for sharing that comment. Is there anyone else who has a question or some advice to share with us?
Well, I think this is, while people are formulating their questions, I can point out people's names and put you on the spot. I won't. This is part of what Julie has prepared me for all week, of getting silence and wanting to encourage conversation. So I told Julie I'd keep people engaged. I might have to finger point to Savannah or maybe Beth to help me with these conversations. Though, one of the things that we're looking at is prioritizing some of these features. Is that something, Julie, you can help me with?
Thank you, Jackie. Yes, in order to be strategic and have our resources, meaning finances, go as far as possible with all these features that we would like to incorporate on the front porch of Rancho Canada, we have to kind of package our amenities so that we are the most competitive in this grant package. And I'm talking about the grant that's due on November 5th, specifically.
I put it on Julie and then she froze. She'll be back. Julie, if you'd like to take your
sorry about that,
you're fine.
Is that are going to do the dog parks, the children's playground, and utilize multi-use trails by incorporating the existing golf carts. So we're really looking to reuse amenities that are already existing on the site. One of the things I do want to point out about the large and small dog park is that that footprint is also going to be used to support CAL FIRE. So the district is, again, trying to be very strategic about emergency services and how we can, support the community and the region in the greatest way possible. So we will be following up with the other projects, such as the outdoor picnic areas, the playground, and the amphitheater, as grants and funding opportunities make themselves available. And I'd really like to point out to everybody who's listening in tonight is that the board will be addressing this capital budget tomorrow night and kind of strategizing further about how we move forward on these projects. So if you do have concerns about funding, tomorrow night's a good meeting to attend. Thank you, Jackie.
Yeah, and Julie, Anne also commented, instead of looking at thing as one or the other, like a roofer or a trellis, the suggestion is maybe have one open trellis and a full covered roof shelter. So if there's more than one in the dog park, people have options. So I think that's great to kind of look at that. Julia, would you like to respond to that?
Yeah, I just wrote back in the chat as well that I think those providing those options is a great idea. And then I also just wanted to reiterate what Julie was talking about in terms of utilizing the existing infrastructure in terms of the golf cart paths. So those gray lines that you're seeing, if this is the first time you've seen the layout of the dog parks, the light gray lines, I'll just annotate here for a second. So in this area here and in these stretches here, these are existing paved golf cart paths that I've highlighted in blue. We've intentionally located the dog parks so that they straddle those paths, so that because we can utilize that as an opportunity for accessible access and to the entire lengths of the dog parks. And then the darker gray concrete that you'll see, I'll just highlight that in a different color. This is new paving that will propose to get you to and from accessible parking located here to each of the dog parks. So just wanted to reiterate that as well.
Thank you, Julia.
Great, thank you, Julia. That's very helpful. Diane has made a comment, Julie.
Yes. I was wondering if there is any space or thought or interest in having a community education garden, for instance, like vegetables or even planting pollinator plants as an opportunity for kids to learn about that in the environment.
What a wonderful question. Thank you so much. Now I get to tell you a story. So when we first obtained this property, it was definitely an irrigated golf course. We didn't know what was going to grow and what wasn't going to grow. And we have a really amazing volunteer who took it upon himself to say that he understood that we were going to be working on this large restoration project along the Carmel River that's going to take 10 plus years. He would like to be able to do some experiments, some research, and be able to say what plants might grow well. So he's done several different treatments. We scraped the soil, he solar panel plastic on it and put solar plastic, dark and light, and was determined how do you prepare the soil? And from there he's planted over 10,000 plants, both on the east side, and the dog park is being kind of built around it, and on the west side, which is right adjacent to that area on the west side that we called the platform for future events. And that restoration site is also going to be maintained. And in fact, and this year we had 2 monarch caterpillars on the east side of the restoration site. So it's a great education opportunity. We've had reports in both in the newspaper and a public radio report highlighting the site. And Savannah is building her education programs around some of the work that's being done. And Savannah, would you like to talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. So a lot of our education programs have been informal in the past, and now we are aiming to reach at school students. And one of the main factors and main focuses in our education program is about habitat health. And of course, pollinators are incredibly important and integral for the educating students about how the habitats function and how they might be healthy or they're not so healthy. So that work that Scott Hennessy is doing, we've been keeping up to date with it. And essentially that is kind of like a experiment garden right now.
And there'll be additional opportunities. It's been a tough year and a half for all of you, I imagine. In the beginning, it was helpful for the environment, though now it seems like, it's with all the other things happening, there's still more work to do. Once we get back to in-person activities, there'll be many opportunities for the public to help support the restoration areas that are going on at this park. And continuing to stay informed is the first step towards that.
Jackie, we have a question from Amanda.
Hi, Amanda. How are you?
Hey, Jackie. I'm really glad Diane brought up the question about the pollinator garden. I had a little note while listening to all this about a display garden, a native plant garden, as well, being kind of around the outdoor classroom area. I think that would be really super. And yeah, Scott Hennessy, I'm glad Savannah mentioned his name. That I think we met him out there at the park at some point in the past, but that little patch he has kind of going down from the main, this gateway area that we're looking at, that would be really cool, I think, to kind of link up with more kind of corridors, essentially, like staging the native plant gardens so that they act as a corridor for birds and other animals to get to the pond, because the pond's kind of this nice little island in the middle, and then it's all the turf around it. And in the conceptual drawings, there's some trees and such around, but it'd be kind of cool to strategize ahead of time and plan to make some good brushy cover and tree cover, kind of connecting up either that tree line on the west side of the property, over towards the pond, or just kind of weaving in between all these shelters and paths. I think that would be a really great addition. Just something to keep in mind. That's what I was thinking too.
I love it. Yeah, when we first were out here and kind of, scoping out the area during the transition of hearing that we might get the property and actually obtaining the property, when we got permission to get on site and Scott started his work, I imagined that whole lower area just being this wonderful restored area with flutterbys is what I call them. So you'd walk down the trail and all of these things would cross over you, so you'd be immersed in nature. And all you had to do is, and it would be available for everyone, because all you'd have to do is get to the river and back, which is, you know, I don't know, less than a quarter of a mile.
Mhm, yeah.
And if you could travel that far, you'd be immersed in nature. The other thing, you bring up great ideas, and it just reminds me of this passion to be able to make a sensory garden alongside with it, so
that'd
that
be
you
great.
could maybe touch something or smell something. So
Smell.
there is a lot of opportunity to further expand those experiences, and that's what the park is about. This front area, the east and the west of the Rancho Canada Unit, is really the gateway. All of it is a gateway to get people out further, because there's some people that that have never gone beyond experiencing a grass lawn. And we have the opportunity to change that for them, that maybe if they go to a pond and they see something, that next time they'll want to go further and go to the river, or after that they might even go to a floodplain, and eventually they could get into the front ranch in the Animas Pond, you know. So this is really an opportunity to expand on all of those and include it for everyone.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks.
Nice, thank you for sharing. And then for the Pollinator Garden, you know, there is a monarch group through the Resource Conservation District, and we're part of that group, and definitely a lot of this piece of it is to get funding to help support that work that's already being done.
I wanted to say hi to you, Jackie. I haven't seen you in a while.
Hi, David.
Hi.
We do have a question from Anne, and I'd like to direct it to Beth. The question is there any thought, or Beth and Greg, is there any thought to convert the concrete golf cart paths on the west side to DG or some other natural material?
Definitely. That's a great question. And we've been looking at initially just some cost-effective ways to replace the cart path, and DG is one of the preferred materials. We're also looking at some opportunities to make the cart paths wider. And so what that might look like is adding a shoulder to both sides of the existing cart path and using a stabilized DG material. So we're really excited that as we kind of look at realigning the trail system and providing some maybe new opportunities around the kind of the pond and through some of these new programs, that we can aesthetically find like a blend between some of the existing materials and some of the new preferred with more sustainable materials. So definitely exploring all those options.
So is there anything else that we haven't covered? Is there a question we haven't asked in our surveys or our outreach that we should have asked?
I do have another question in regards to donations and funding.
We haven't asked.
Yeah, I have inroads to a number of companies and corporations that will donate, like the logs and things of that sort for the playgrounds and water features and water storage underground blocks and things like that. They've done it numerous times in around, and the water capture systems, they do it all over the world, in Africa and places where there's fresh water needed, the atmospheric ones that take it from the air. And so I just have, and Jackie, you and I or Raquel or whatever, we can talk about that. I'm back in the area, so I could really maybe help in those ways to bring some funding to these number of projects that are wanted to be built. So
thank you so much, David, and I'd like to turn it over to Jackie about the possible donation plan in the future.
I'm sorry, I missed what you said. Can you say that again, please?
I would like you to maybe touch on possible donation plan in the future for these items and sustaining the maintenance of them.
Well, thank you, Julie. We're seeking grants. First, we thank all of you that live within the district because you are providing us funding on a regular basis through your property tax and the passage of the facilities assessment. And so thank you. And we are always looking for ways on how to improve how much we can, how much money we have to spend on these infrastructures and restoration and education. And we often hear even staffing, and especially staffing, because we're a small and mighty team that do a lot to change, to help make a difference in the Monterey Peninsula area. There used to be a little button on our website that I will work this week to get put back on there, and you can donate directly online via the donate button. There's also, you can submit it as check to the Park District. You can mail it to our PO box, which is on our website, or give me a call. You could call me. I'll put my phone number, my cell phone number in the chat. And if you ever need to call me, sometimes I even answer. And if not, if not, you can always leave a message. And other ways to donate. Julie, did I miss anything?
Well, I'd like to remind everyone that we do have the dog group 4, and once we have a commitment on a shovel-ready date, if we're successful with the grants, we're not going to be able to fund everything. There's always a wish list, and so I'm sure that they will be launching some kind of, dog fundraising campaign for the park, whether it's for benches or the water fountain or whatever it may be. What the district is trying to be very thoughtful in their approach for donating, because we want to make sure that we have shared resources for funding these projects. So we don't want to get ahead of ourselves and have donations or capital dollars and then we're not able to meet it, and so, or match it. And so again, tomorrow night the board is going to be discussing this actual schedule of how we tier these projects and what areas we may need funding. Another area would be the playground. We had talked about doing these planting boxes and interpretive areas, making it fun and educational at the same time. And the district will not be able to fund it all, especially in the first phase. So there will be opportunities. So I would encourage the public, the community, to keep tabs on the website. And Jackie will definitely be following up on the donation piece of it. I see that Jackie has put her cell phone and her office number on the chat. Again, you can always go to MPRPD.org and you'll find information on the website there regarding all the grant projects. If at this time we're coming on to the 8 o'clock hour, and we certainly appreciate everybody participating and sharing and providing us some more design input and thoughtful ways that we can be resourceful. What I'd like to do at this point is move it to our grant slide. Savannah, if you wouldn't mind.
We have one more question really quickly from Julia, or in addition.
Go right ahead, I'm sorry.
Jackie and Julie, I just wanted to ask one more question kind of for the collective group, which is, and it kind of alludes to what you were saying with Dog Group 4 and their ongoing involvement in terms of fundraising for special projects that might come after, the initial implementation. has the district discussed, or can any of the community members that are with us tonight, is there any information that we could give them in terms of best ways to provide ongoing, community comment or input? Should that be routed directly through the district's website, or what's the best way for, even as we continue to go through the grant process and beyond the grant process?
That's a great question. Julie, you want to answer, or you want me to?
Go right ahead.
That's a great question. And I think the best way to go is to contact us on info@mprpd.org is really a great way to get involved. That is routed to the appropriate person. So you'll get a more a quicker response, and probably a better response than contacting me directly and me trying to find the right person for you. So info@mprpd.org. You can go to our website. It's also on a lot of the literature. And our website is right where we're getting ready. Thank you, Savannah has put it into the chat. I think that the information that you were asking is kind of where Julie was going next, with the summary of the grant and our website information. So perfect timing. Thank you for the segue.
So thank you, Jackie. And just as a reminder, these three features, meaning the children's playground, the dog park, and the ADA accessibility with the use of the golf cart paths, has filtered to the top because they meet the criteria and give us the most competitive advantage for this regional park program grant. And so that's where the consultants and the design teams will be focusing a lot of their efforts. You can see the deadline is rather soon. Meanwhile, we will be preparing, the schematics on the rest of the amenities. So it's not that we're leaving something behind, it's just that we're trying to put our best project forward regarding the ability to possibly get funding. This regional park program grant is for a maximum of 3 million if we're successful. And this combined project will be 3 million. So keep informed by going to visit parks.ca.gov/grants. This is your state funded grant program. And also you can always ask us on info where we are with the progress of that grant. And at this time, I would like to turn it over to Savannah.
Julie, this is again the contact information that we were mentioning, and it's also in the chat available for you. Visiting mprpd.org for up-to-date information. You can also email info@mprpd.org. And we also have multiple social media accounts where we post updates, events, and other fun information. So if you all can visit us there, there will be lots of up-to-date information. And I'd really like to just kind of, again, thank everyone for coming and providing your input, because this input really provides direction, not only for Palo Corona, but it also tells us where you all are at for even our other parks. Your preferences here lead into planning and design for future parks and for future amenities and those items. So thank you.